My college professor deducted points because she said my family's Spanish accent was incorrect. She had no idea. The man she called wrong had spent 40 years translating legal documents in 3 countries. I grew up translating, not because I wanted to, because somebody always needed me. At doctor's appointments, at the bank, parent-teacher conferences. If my grandparents couldn't find the right English word, I filled it in. So when I signed up for advanced Spanish in college, I honestly thought it'd be my easiest class. The first essay came back covered in reading, not grammar, not spelling, pronunciation notes. My professor had written, avoid regional expressions, use proper academic Spanish. She circled words my grandmother had been saying my entire life. After class, I asked, which ones are wrong? She smiled politely. They're not technically wrong, just not proper. That sentence bothered me all week. The next assignment was oral. We had to record ourselves reading a short passage. I got an 82. Reason? Accent too informal. I stared at the feedback for almost 5 minutes. Too informal? My accent sounded exactly like my family, exactly like my grandparents. When I asked how to improve, she said, try sounding less neighborhood. I don't think she meant to insult me, but somehow it felt worse because she didn't even realize she had. That weekend, I visited my grandfather. He's 78. Came to the US with 2 suitcases. Spent decades translating contracts for shipping companies across Mexico, Spain, and the United States. I played him my recording. Then, I read her feedback. He listened quietly, didn't interrupt once. Finally, he smiled. She probably learned Spanish from books. Then he asked, may I hear how she speaks? The following Tuesday, our professor demonstrated pronunciation during class. I asked if I could record it for studying. She agreed. That night, I played both recordings, hers, then mine, then my grandfather's. He paused every few seconds, pointing out vocabulary that belonged to Spain, pronunciation that belonged to one region, expressions she'd marked correct that sounded strange in Latin America. He wasn't mocking her. He just kept saying, different isn't incorrect. I asked if I could quote him in class. He laughed. Only if you quote the whole sentence. The next discussion, I raised my hand. Instead of arguing, I simply said, my grandfather reviewed both recordings. Then, I read his words. When a language is spoken by hundreds of millions of people across dozens of countries, no single accent owns it. The room got quiet, really quiet. Then, another student spoke up. She was from Colombia. Mine sounds different too. Then someone from Argentina. Then another from Puerto Rico. One after another. Not arguing, just existing. A week later, our syllabus quietly changed. The grading rubric no longer said standard pronunciation. It now said clear and understandable pronunciation. Nobody announced it, nobody celebrated, but everyone noticed. At the end of the semester, my professor handed back my final project. There was only one note, no corrections, no reading, just one sentence. Thank you for reminding me that teaching a language isn't the same as owning it. My grandfather smiled when I showed him. Then said the most grandfather thing imaginable. Good. Now tell her my coffee was better than hers too.